Welcome to the PARAcast. I'm your host, Tomas the Boss Hernandez. Joining me live, live to me. In fact, I've been live. I've been live for 40 years.
We are living.
We're not unalive.
F it, we'll do it live. It was kind of funny. I was sitting there as the Friday night slipsup match, and I'm sitting there making ready, and Gino's there, and everyone's talking and giving me shit like I'm making ready. And I'm just like, oh, whatever, let's go. The same thing that happens every time I make ready. And he goes, that would drive me absolutely insane. But
with your wops and your waps, or
yeah, I'm getting wops and waps, and I'm getting shit from Dan Ward. I'm doing and the wings for steel and all that stuff. And then everyone's giving me shit. And then Gina goes, man, if that was happening to me, I could not stand it. I'd get so mad. But he's impervious to this. Joining me tonight. Most consecutive wins on Maury Povich for not being the father. It's Robert Wyatt.
Number one. Number one.
The girls always run off to the back. And you may remember him from his unscheduled appearances on My 600-Pound Life, Hoarders, Live PD, Love After Lockup, and 90-Day Fiancé Resort. It's Jared Stepp.
It was a busy week. We did a lot. It was very productive.
You imagine if you could if you could import I got a mail order bride. She's 600 pounds. She hoards, and she just got out of prison. You could almost run the gamut. I'm trying to win the triple crown of TLC.
You would have a 20-season runner right there.
I know.
She's pregnant with sextuplets.
And then it gets called our 700-pound life. SLPSA. Lots of stuff going on in SLPSA, but one of the cool things is that this week we tried a Friday match and a Saturday match, both being the same matches, but a 2-day shooting schedule. You get to pick one or pick the other. And since I was off this week on vacation, I picked the Friday version, which seemed to be the wrong one to pick.
Or the better
one. Or the better. Well,
depending how much popcorn you had.
Yes.
Our
Friday match, it makes all the drama going on with USPSA pale in comparison.
So, I get there at 1:00, and we have iPad issues. We're shooting, and we're trying to fix the iPad, and we're trying to edit the targets because there's one too many targets, and somehow we added 56 targets to the same stage, but it only displays 12 targets, but it won't let us finish the score because practice score still thinks there's another 38 targets left to score on the thing. So it just was the thing. So we ended up getting a different iPad. We're messing around with that. We're shooting. We're having a great time. We're moving through stuff at a decent pace, and then all of a sudden, everyone just starts getting tired out because there's 3 squads to shoot 7 stages, and there's about 7 people per squad. And so a guy's scorekeeping, a guy's ROing, a guy just shot, and a guy's on deck. So that's 3 other people.
Yeah, go ahead.
And then what happens is some of those people get tired or may not be used to doing a lot of that labor and standing up for a few hours on a Friday afternoon and dehydrating out.
You had GMs on your squad?
And then what happens is Tyrell Kelsey literally has his gun, and I have a score pad or an RO, and everyone, there's 2 or 3 guys, and people are getting wasted and tired quick. And then after we were done, it took us about 4 hours to shoot the match, to go through 7 stages with 7 people per squad. No one ever got backed up on or anything like that. It was just a slog. And then we weeded and threw away garbage as part of the Friday squad. And then there was some drama. It was one heck of a Friday evening. And so it was as far as all the problems that were found out early on Friday, and it sounds like the Saturday match because they didn't increase capacity for the match. They just said we're taking the same amount of shooters as we took on a 1-day match, and we're spreading that out between 2 days. Right. And it seemed like the Saturday paid a lot of dividends for you guys on Saturday.
Well, that was one question I had, and that's what I didn't understand. Because for me, the point of expanding the match to a second day would be to allow more shooters into the match. So if you wanted to cap, let's say, primary day, Saturday, at 15 per squad, that gives you 6 squads is 90 people. And so that means any extras could go to a Friday match or whatever, and we could do 15-man squads over there or 10-man squads or whatever you wanted. But that allows you to have, in total 120, 130, 140 people maybe attend the match. So it was odd though, because they just said we're still only going to allow 100 shooters. We're going to have 20 or 30 of them go on Friday, and then 60, 70 of them go on Saturday. So our Saturday squads were tiny. I mean, we had probably 10 people on our squad,
10
Robert?
people. Yeah, it moved fast.
And that's kind of the golden.
That's the perfect number. It's the
Squad
perfect number
size.
for a squad.
You want to have between 10 and 12 people on a squad is perfect. If it starts getting to 15, that becomes too many. And once it goes past 8, that becomes way too few. Because I've experimented with this in the UPOA matches that I run on staff day and et cetera, et cetera. We've been trying out different squad sizes, and you need at least 10 shooters on a squad. And realistically, it's more like 11 or 12 is like 10 to 12 is perfect.
9 is kind of the dead minimum if you want to give people a rest.
Right.
Yes.
I don't even know if I would do 9, honestly. I would say probably still 10.
I told I've told a lot of people, so we'll shoot it all day on Friday, shoot the state match all day on Friday, and I'm pretty much telling them I'm capping it at 9, knowing that somebody's going to try and sneak on and put it to 10. But what I've noticed is when you have a smaller crew like that, you almost have to say, okay, well, yeah, you've got your score, your RO, the scoring RO, the shooter, and then usually the guy who just shot. But then you almost have to tell all the people, whoever just shot, they get the tape, they reset the stage, and the rest of you guys go F off. You can do whatever you want to. You almost have to dedicate somebody on a rotating basis to do the reset, to give enough people time just to take a breather real quick, get a drink of water, whatever. And we've tried doing the thing where like, okay, well, let's all just load our mags after the fact, and that actually ends up being a huge problem because people forget.
People forget,
But,
it messes up their stage. But the other part is too, it's like
it's
especially
hard.
on a major match, you get much more less participation. Mainly because that people care so much about what the stage and what they're going to do that they'll try to sneak a walkthrough in whenever possible, and so you actually get less participation in the staff in the resetting of the stage than anything else, because
Right.
there'll be 2 or 3 guys like working and looking at angles and not being in a position where they can tape or reset.
Yeah.
But
I kind of think that yesterday, Friday and Saturday's match, the Friday portion was still a bit of a proof of concept. Like, let's see if we can make this thing work.
yep.
Right.
Even Dan had kind of mentioned, he's like, I don't know if we're gonna do that again. Well, maybe we will. It was kind of this thing. I think it's a good idea. I don't know that I really like the idea of
Well,
adding more people to the match. I mean, we certainly can,
I
but
do not think SLPSA needs to add more people to the match. SLPSA already does 2 matches a month on back-to-back weekends.
Right.
Yeah.
2, having the volunteerism of the match director and the range master to basically spend 4 days now, Friday and
Right.
Saturday, attending the match. So if they shoot it on Friday, they still have to be there for Saturday for no good reason except for to sit there and officiate and arbitrate because it is the same match. And so that's like that does a lot to do it. And so like if the staff that is sitting there that is responsible for the match gets out earlier, like 12 o'clock on the Saturday of that second part of that match, I think that is a benefit and a boon to the volunteers and for the club. I mean, the one thing is like if we needed to open up for more and more shooters in the area to join, then maybe the first Saturday and the second Saturday match is the same match. Period. And it just continues on with the new set of shooters the next day, the next weekend. But I don't think we're close to that yet.
I don't think we're there yet. I think this is probably going to taper off as winter rolls in because nobody's going to want to be out there in the cold.
Yeah.
Right.
But SLPSA right now has a unique problem where we actually have a lot of people wanting to shoot, and you see other clubs around the nation that are actually tapering. They're losing people that want to come out and shoot, but right now we're just packing them in, and we've done a good job with our stage flow where even with higher, like our last matches and stuff like that, even with our higher attendance and not including the Friday portion of it, we're still getting these matches over about 1:30,
Right.
2 o'clock.
Yep.
And that's pretty damn good.
Yep. And
That's fantastic.
And
Yeah.
it's a stage design. It's a stage design problem when you have that kind of stuff, and so and honestly, like an unsung hero of the whole operation is Taylor Daggs and his swinger setup and his swinger arms, because
100%.
that has saved more reshoots than I don't think any other invention that has ever been created, because it's this, like, honestly, like Taylor should get out there and hit Taylor Daggs up on Instagram, and he can show you all sorts of pictures on how every club should basically do it now.
Right.
But
that is by far probably the best activator contraption in the entire world, and I guarantee you, people are going to see that, they're going to take it back to their clubs, and some company's going to go and try and patent it and say that it was theirs. But
well,
Taylor's the
he
one
just
who
needs to
invented
patent it and sell it to MGM, and they'll let MGM or Action Target freaking wheel and deal that thing out.
Yeah.
Anyway, I shot 92% of Grandmaster Josh Wakamatsu and 1% or 0.5% behind Robert Wyatt. I didn't have Robert to pace off of or anybody else, but I took some electrical tape. You can still see the smudge. It needs to be cleared off on this bad boy.
Okay, I was wondering if you had done that.
I had
It
shot
looked like you did.
6 out of the 7 stages with the occluded dot.
All right, tell me why, and tell me what you found.
So I was shooting with Colby, and we went through, and Colby had like a disastrous first stage that we were sitting to, and I was just like, dude, you are like moving your arm. Like, the last thing to make it to the target is your eyes, buddy. Like, because he was like moving his arm or throwing his head, and he was like over transitioning to stuff, and then like he was like spraying like 2 shots, and like he's working quick, and he was just like, yeah, I'm just all out of sorts. So I was just like, well, you can put the dot on, you can cover up the optic, and that can kind of focus you on the visual aspect of it, and just try to not think about anything else besides the visual aspect on it. Like, grab your grip. He's got a great grip. Shoot it. Occlude the dot. And he was like hesitant about doing it, and I was just like, I'll do it with you. I'll do it with you. I will do it with you. There's nothing to be afraid of. It is not something to be scared of, and it doesn't have a detrimental effect. So he did it first stage, and I just left it on for the rest of the match. And
what was his feelings towards it?
So he went there and he shot a stage, and it seemed like he liked it. But then we got to a stage that had the 3 per and had very long hard shots on IPSC classics, and he said that he wanted to take it off to make sure that he was doing it correctly without the aid of the occlusion. And so I was just like, I've shot this at farther distances occluded. I know that I am not going to see a shift in the bullet impact, and in fact, it'll help me land the dot a little bit better. And so I went there and I shot that stage with 3 Charlies or whatever. And it was 36 rounds or something on that stage, or something like that, 34 rounds. So it is, I personally like it. I like it a lot. I like shooting with the dot occluded just because it really focuses my eyes where they need to be all the time. And
Right.
it's almost like one of those things. It's almost like having your homework due. Like, when you're entering the next position, you know, I have to look at that target before I bring the gun up. Because if I don't do that first, I'm going to run into trouble. Which means I have it, not that it will happen, but I have a chance of seeing nothing but blue. And so what it definitely does is it makes you look where you're supposed to look when you're supposed to be looking.
Do you find that you're not doing that already?
Well, it's very hard because understanding your visual depth in the moment is very hard to do, because it's hard. Like, on an iron sight, you have something very material up front, and you can tell if you're front sight focused or if you're target focused, because one gets hazy pretty quick. The dot's a little harder. because when you're focusing at the dot, it's hard to tell in real time if you're actually target focused or dot focused, and that's how a lot of people find themselves very much thinking that they're target focused when they're actually dot focusing and bouncing the dot all around and trying to track the dot. I mean, we talked about that last year with you and Mark Walkie, telling you, hey, you're looking at the dot. Stop looking at the dot. So it's one of those things that, like, if you have it on the gun, you understand instantly, like, I got to look a certain way when I need to do that, and it just kind of helps put things in order. Like, I find it much more of a crutch I find it much more of a tool than a hindrance when trying to shoot and keep everything visually acclimated. I also shot an IDPA match on Saturday, and we shot a classifier, and one of the guys I love seeing and I haven't seen in a long time, Travis Woolrich, we had him put it on for a classifier after we were done shooting the match, and he noticed like how many times his eyes were like, what's going on this shift? And I find it one of the most useful tools that I've kind of messed around with visually in a long time.
I think it's very, very good to do in practice. I would not do it in a match.
Well, here's my argument against that.
I'm
under
for what it's worth. I'm actually with Jared on this one.
So my counter argument to that
Screw
is,
you, Tom.
Yeah, it's very easy to sit there and say that if it's not able to be used in the match, then it's not actually a very good practice tool. And the other part is too is like if you use it in the match, you will. It's very clear that it's not a hindrance to what you're doing inside of a match, and that you can actually stress test it. The other part is too is you mentally have to stress test what you're actually doing in the match, because the visual thing is so much harder to pick up. Like if you go in practice with no stress, it is very easy to set your eyes in the proper plane of what you're doing. But under the stress, like all equipment and all practice techniques have to be stress tested to have some sort of validation.
Then Tom, I guess my response to that is, why are you doing practice wrong?
Well, it's not that you're doing practice wrong.
Well, you kind of are, because the point of practice is to do two things: is to push the envelope, but it's also to simulate the stressors that you would see in a match setting. Mm-hmm. And so like Ben Barry talked about this one. It's like, actually, I think he got it from Graffel, but he's like, if you set up an array that you're going to shoot, you only shoot it once. You get one shot at the apple, and that's it. And so when you're doing your dry fire, or even in a live fire session, this now counts for everything. You don't get to come back and be like, shoot it 10, 20 times and then post the really cool Instagrams. Yep. Do it once, and that becomes the real deal. And then you don't go back to it.
Like a stage in a local match.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I mean, like, so set your practice to be as correct as possible.
Yeah, that's fine. Like you can set it up to be as correct as possible, but you can also use it as a tool in that practice or the practice for the stage to make it possible. Like I think there's more resistance against it because of who's advocated it before it, and that I think it's actually worth a try. It is a tool to help your eyes move in the spot where they are. No more different than having a fiber optic dot on the set of an iron sights to help your eyes pinpoint exactly where they need to be, or let's say an electronic red dot that points to the target and makes the aiming process easier. It is simply a tool to use. Is it a tool for everything? And can you get away without using it or get away with using it? Yes. But it is an aid of putting visual things first. That's all I will say for it. And when I do not have it on, I find it easier to do what's right all the time. Keep my eyes ahead of my work. It's just, when it's there, it's like, you better do it now or you're going to run into trouble.
I think it's a good tool to teach people how they need to look at targets. But at that point, once people are doing that, then that tool becomes unnecessary and ultimately a hindrance.
Yes, well, after a while, it will become, like, after a while of training, it becomes non-necessary because your eyes are already trained to that point.
And I mean, some people still use it, and I'm not going to go so far as to say that what's right, what's wrong.
Those people are wrong.
Those people are wrong, and they should feel bad about their life choices.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to say that.
God
I've seen people do it both ways. But I mean, if they didn't want us looking through the glass, maybe they would have just covered it up to begin with.
Yeah, but once you do it about like it really has
I
nothing to
mean,
do with
why would
looking through the glass.
functionally why would you take away
You don't take
your
away.
why would you well
It
you
doesn't take
do.
it doesn't take away anything.
It does take away.
It doesn't
If
take.
you go and cover up the glass,
It only takes
okay, that
it
is called
away
taking away.
if you look at the wrong part.
Okay, so what if you're like, like Patchy the pirate with only one eye?
Well,
So
then
that's now
obviously it
taking that
doesn't work
away.
for you because of science. Like
I know,
I
I'm not bringing outliers into it. I know, but it is still the idea. If we didn't need the glass, then the glass wouldn't. Then they would just cover it up from the factory.
I see what you're saying, Robert, and I 100% agree, and I disagree with Tom.
Thank you, Jared.
Yay, 2 against 1. No, I'm just kidding.
But
I don't know.
If you look at the right part,
I'm helping.
you lose no visual information. Period.
Disagree.
I disagree with you 100%. I really do.
What do you lose?
You lose
That little
what
part.
you lose what your dominant eye is seeing.
Correct, which is the dot.
Okay, so your opposite eye is filling in the information, but if you go and close that eye, suddenly you don't have that anymore. Okay, that's how I look at it. I mean, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying
he's
he's threatening us. He's got a gun.
Right now, with my iron sights covering my eye, lined up on a target, and then my other eye is filling in the information. Am I occluding the dot?
Tommy, to me, this is kind of like the argument that we get into so much about, should you shoot with both eyes open or one eye?
Both.
And the answer is yes. If you closing one eye makes you shoot better and it doesn't have any negative effects against you, then by gosh, you go do that. And if covering up like the primary sighting system makes you shoot better, then by gosh, you go do it.
It is non-detrimental and can be used as a training tool. That's all my argument is. I'm not saying it's better than not having the dot.
I'm with you on the training tool. When you say it's non-detrimental, that's where I have to get off the bus with that. I can't, because it does become a detriment. And you don't have to use it.
You don't have to, no.
I mean, if I just come back, if they didn't want us to be able to look through that glass, they wouldn't have put it there. They would have saved a ton of money and not put the glass
I am
there.
all about not having it on during a match. I ran it during a match.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's good to try. It is not detrimental or scary. It is just a tool to look at the right thing. What?
If you didn't have that sticker on your dot, would you have done 2% better and beaten Robert?
No.
I had a pretty shitty match. I mean, I bet you could have brought that in.
No, that's not what killed me. The same stage that killed me last week, it killed me this week, and it had everything to do with shooting close targets very fast and a bunch of movement, and I just missed my spots. Let's see here. We talked about that. Oh, I had an idea for a match. I'll bring that up a little bit later, but let's talk about your guys' SLPSA match.
Go for it, Jared.
It was good.
Yeah, you won the overall. Shooting somebody else's gun.
I borrowed Zach's Infinity 9 Major because I found a case of 9 Major in my garage. And I was like, oh, I should shoot this somehow. And so I was chatting with Zach about other things. And then he mentioned, it somehow got brought up that he had an extra 9 Major gun. I'm like, can I borrow? I don't want to buy it because that's going to probably be a lot of money. It's an Infinity. But can I borrow it? And he's like, yeah, man. So he gave me the holster, the gun, already got the mags and everything. And so I played with it on Friday. Got it zeroed. It shoots really well. And then on Saturday at the match, I just went full try hard and just shot as fast as I possibly could compute anything, where essentially the entirety of the target zone, if it was a wide open target, the entirety of the target zone was an acceptable hit. And it showed. I think I had everybody else had 120, 130 alphas. I had 91 alphas and 10 deltas.
With 85 seconds on the match.
The time was just crazy fast. And so I had a lot of fun. I didn't have a single miss, but I did have a lot I had way too many deltas, and
Only
I think
9.
that's just part
Only
of it.
9 deltas in 7 stages.
I was gonna say I thought I had 10, but it was very much a speed, just zooming around, having fun, and it was a fun match. It was a lot of fun. It was a good culmination of efforts where I've been working on accuracy a lot these past 1 or 2 years, especially trying to shoot those B8s at distance. And so to have this and just go and zoom around with it was an absolute blast. And I'm going to shoot at the state match, so it's gonna be a good time. I'm excited for it. But I will say, holy shit, those open guns are a bitch and a half to clean.
Really?
Yeah, just so much stuff on it, and then just like there's burnt, the powder, little flakes are just everywhere.
Is
And
that
it's
just the case of the 9 major just having so much powder
Yeah.
in the case volume that a lot of it doesn't get burned up and just gets tossed
and
everywhere?
And I forgot that's how it was, but the other 2 9 major guns I've had were the same way, where it's just when you look in there, yep, there's going to be little bits and pieces of brass.
Yep.
And so I not brass, of powder, and so I forgot about that. And so it took me a good minute to take apart that gun and clean it. You got to take off the charging handle. You have to take apart this. You have to take apart that. And so it was a whole to do the other night, but it was fun. I'm looking forward to shooting it some more, and it was great because I helped Zach get on the warpath, because Zach's just kind of been stomping on everybody at SLPSA for the past couple months, and he's just been winning and winning and winning and winning, and so it's always good to have a loss that doesn't mean anything right before a big
with somebody
match.
shooting your own gun.
Right.
Yeah,
But this loss doesn't mean anything to Zach. It doesn't mean anything against him. But it's a very, very good. I don't want to say it's a gut check, but it's a good thing to give him some drive.
It's a motivational tool.
It's a very good motivator.
The,
and so I was joking around with him. I'm like, I'm helping you, and he's like, thank you so much,
I even
Jerry,
think
for
you
your
recorded
wonderful love.
a 10 split on that match.
Yeah.
A couple 10s with that open gun.
Yeah, I had some 10s and 11s, and so I shot that a bunch, and I've kind of gotten, I don't want to say I got used to it, but I probably shot about 300-400 rounds out of it now. And then today I was teaching a class about movement and visual patience and stuff, and I was shooting my Warwick, and I think I was trying to shoot that the way I was shooting the open gun, and I induced several malfunctions throughout the class while I was I think I was outrunning the trigger, and I was like, crap, what am I doing? So that was a funny thing that I haven't dealt with for a while, because those open guns shoot so freaking fast.
Yeah.
So yeah,
They
it was a lot of fun.
Robert.
No, I had a fun. I had a couple stages that were just like mentally, I was not in that match at all. And we had
when you got like 7 feet from the fault line and shot another shot, and then we're like, shit, damn it.
And then I stop and I'm like, I need to go back, and I'm like, wait, no, God, no, damn it, go.
I had one of those at the IDPA match.
It was just one of those things. It's just so, I mean, it's just so stupid funny when it happens, because you're just like you don't do this, and then you do it, because I had a trigger freeze. And then I take the step. I'm all out of the fault lines. Fire the gun, and I actually stop for the briefest of seconds. And I'm like, I should go. Oh no, go now. And then the entire stage was just shot. I'm just like, I completely forgot everything.
It never amazes me like how slow we are at the math of USPSA. Where you step out, you fire a shot, and you're like, oh no. Or you do something like you see a mic, and then you're like, I should go make that. And like you're thinking, should I make that up? Yes. Hurry and make it up. And then you start presenting out the gun, you're like, nope, too late. And then you're just
abort.
Don't do it. It's like, it's just the speed in which we can think and the speed in which we're asked to perform are two different levels of things. And so like it's kind of one of like the unrealistic things of like USPSA and handgun shooting is the speed now that we are asked to do to be competitive is
Yeah.
faster than the computing time for people to actually make a lot of decisions. And there's a
Yeah.
few
Correct.
there's a handful of people who can, so it's just like it is an exercise in experience in predictive shooting for 20 or 30 seconds. Like, under my knowledge and experience at shooting a target at 7 yards with this handgun and this load, I can get this one sight picture, press the trigger twice, transition it over to this target without really having to acquire sight, press the trigger twice. These two targets that are a little bit separated farther apart, I need a little bit more, need a little bit less, but like you're just flying the autopilot. But heaven forbid if they gave you a blind stage with things that had like significant consequences to your match if you had to go in there, like it would be, there'd be, all the USPSA shooters would still do it way faster than everybody else, but it would still be a dramatically different pace than what you would be used to. This brings up two things. Bad guy match. I wanted to ask you guys about this. No affiliated IDP or USPSA would let us have this match, but I came up with the idea for a bad guy match, which is, it's an IDPA style match in which all the scenarios are written as you, as the bad guy or aggressor. And so, like, instead of non-threats, you have other ones that have like AKs. Those are like your other teammates. You have hostage threats, and then you would have like security and like police and like CCW threats.
Oh, Lord.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Hold on.
You'd get
Hold on.
on the news for that
There's
one.
some rules. There's some rules you have to do this. You have to wear, as part of your
Lobster
equipment,
X.
a balaclava mask of any sort to conceal your identity. And my other rule I came up with, if you hit a non-threat, you have to go through the stage and kill all the other non-threats. Because once you're on the hook for murder one, there's no difference between killing one person and being on the hook and killing the rest. And if you don't kill the rest, your match is over because you've gone to jail because of the witnesses. Let's put the outlaw back into outlaw matches. That's all I'm asking
Why
for.
don't instead we just hop online and play Grand Theft Auto and call it a day?
So it's
Somewhere.
basically Grand Theft Auto, but I would love, just for, because everyone's a good guy here. Like I would just love to have the fun of a bad guy match.
Yeah, you should talk to
that would
Andy
be
Erickson. One of the clubs up there, it's a cops and robbers match, where the cops, if you're in the division of the cops, you have very specific gear requirements. But if you're the robbers, then basically, if you can bring it and it will run, you can shoot it. And so people are showing up like extendo sticks and all kinds of crazy junk. And he says it's just fantastic.
Yeah.
I think we could get away with that if word got out that we were holding a match where we were shooting the ATF and the FBI. While on one hand that would be sort of funny, I don't think the state would really kind of be happy with that.
I think you literally have to have a good guy bad guy division. I think that's what you have to do. You have to have a good guy bad guy division just to make it kosher for everybody else.
Well,
it's the cops and robbers
I'll be honest
version.
with you. If we shoot that match, I ain't showing up. of all the matches in the world, I'm not showing up to that one.
No, we'll just disguise everybody a shooter A through, a shooter 1 through this, and then everyone has their mask on. You show up, you get assigned a number, and that is your deal. And then you take the proceeds and you give it to the police, the local police fraternity or organization to make everything fine.
Buy him a bunch of donuts.
Buy the cops some donuts.
Oh man, that would be hilarious though. Where instead of 15 robbers show up trying to take your Werther's sweets,
that was the best thing. Dan comes over, and I don't remember what the heck the conversation was, but Jared's like, oh, I bet Dan he's old enough. He probably has Werther's candies in his pockets.
And Dan was just like, oh.
The funny thing is,
mildly offended, except for the fact that he did.
You
could have the stage props, whatever booty you're trying to get out of the situation, and that what you're trying to get. Rescue your comrade from the jail, and then you have to drag the body back across the line or whatever. Get him to the car, throw him in the car. Then at position 3, grab the AR-15 and lay down suppressing fire as the car drives away. Some John Dillinger stuff. Yeah, and then the last thing I had to sit there and talk about, we were talking about this on the Patreon side before that, but it was required shots in IDPA. And Robert was talking about, I wish they would get away with that, and I do too.
Wait. Get away with what?
So in IDPA, they can specify certain targets with certain round counts. And since they do not allow the speed reload, dropping a magazine that still has ammunition still in the magazine, there is a lot of gaming the system around round dumping and counting which rounds and where to shoot, and like basically staging the whole entire scenario so that their reloads are happening in an advantageous manner to the stage.
Right.
And I think it's terrible for the sport, and I think it kind of ruins everything. I think I see a lot of people, a lot of targets that get shot up in poor fashion. I get things that get shot up in like I would say a less realistic fashion, just so that people can do an empty reload at another point at the time. Like there was one stage where you had 2 targets per position, and each target's required 3 rounds. Okay, and if you're shooting a single stat gun, you can either shoot the 3 rounds, run to another position, shoot 3 rounds, reload from slide lock, and then continue on shooting 3 rounds, or you can dump 5 in one and 4 in the other, and then have the ability to reload while you're moving to the next position. Like that's an example. Yeah, that's an example of that, and it is significantly faster to sit there and dump the rounds. And for a sport that's trying to mitigate and have people responsible for the shots that they take, I think literally dropping the magazines on the ground would create a better scenario. And for newer shooters, this is one of the things I noticed yesterday, extendedly, is the shots immediately preceding a round dumping event are the least accurate shots of that person's stage. Because when you go into shooting 1 or 2 and being accountable to shooting, I have to shoot 5 at this target, and more than half of those rounds don't count, 60% of those rounds fired at that target, I don't really give a shit about. When you transition to the next target, the sight picture may no longer be there. And so I think it's bad all the way around. That is my critique against it.
It's the hard thing. I don't know if IDPA is ever going to change it. Well, heck, who knows? I mean, after they tossed Brian, then they decided that appendix carry was good. So if one of you guys would just step up and get tossed from IDPA, maybe they'll change the rules.
I think it's something that could definitely be brought up to IDPA headquarters of like, these are the reasons why I think it's a bad thing. Like the round dumping thing. Round dumping was a bad rule because it was impossible to officiate it correctly. But you could instantly make a rule where you get your 2 worst scoring hits on target, and then that would probably change the way that you would do that.
All right. No, it's just weird. I mean, you're never going to get away with from that, because IDPA is just so enamored with this idea of the tactical reload, and why would you ever move ahead?
Yeah.
But it just. I just have a hard time justifying it these days. It doesn't make any sense.
All things have negative consequences to them when you're sitting there, and that's one of the unforeseen things that they did. They knew that they'd get round dumping. I don't think they thought they would get round dumping in the way that they got it.
It's hard with IDPA because, I mean, fundamentally it's a smaller rule book, but more between the make ready and then the unload show clear, there are more rules that apply to the shooter's actions than in USPSA. Yeah. And they are correctly trying to get rid of subjectivity, which is what we should always do, so that they're very hard and fast rules, but at the same time, it is what it is.
But the rulebook 10 years ago and the stages that were 10 years ago were undeniably fantastic, even with all the subjectivity.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
That's the nuts thing.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, those part of the IDPA matches were better than USPSA nationals.
The one thing that I would say that I think is stupid with IDPA right now is the non-shooting activities are no longer required actions. And I think that's just
Dumb.
As we had
Because
subjectivity and
that's
room,
fun.
we had subjectivity and we had room to play within the subject, which was the stage,
Right.
and that
And
made it fun.
That's
But
what made it fun.
that also made it a little bit more screwy because people got is essentially the thing is getting pauper effed in USPSA. So did IDPA really need to change, or did the popularity of production and people shooting USPSA really make everyone go like it has to be equal, fair for everybody, and non-subjective? So
No.
did IDPA need to change, or did all the shooters change on them? Something that does not have unforeseen consequences except for looking great in performance is a Dominate Defense belt. Head on over to Dominate Defense, use promo code PARA10, get a Mach 1 speed belt, get some of their concealed carry gear. Also, Tier 1 Concealment sells their new concealed carry belt. I use that for IDPA. Absolutely fantastic. Rocking my JM setup with my HK45. Holds it steady. It's great. Doesn't bounce around. Fantastic. Check them out. Also, head on over to Room Tactical. Get yourself a +1 for your fun on the stage. Get that time down. Get those reloads down. Get that magazine capacity up. Room Tactical. Use promo code PARA10. Save 10% off your order. And Precision Holsters. Get their fantastic fast holster. One of the best holsters in the industry. Hooks up to your Boss equipment. It's got a Blade Tech pattern, but it is precision made, fast on the draw, very secure. You'll love it. Precision Holsters. Use the same promo code. Robert, Telegram, questions, maybe answers.
Let's see. From Adam Reiser, guy who used to shoot USPSA. He's dead to us now. But
he's a hippie now, living in a van down by the river.
Mm-hmm. That used to be a cautionary tale. Now it's a life goal, apparently. Hypothetical question. Pretend you used to shoot 3-gun in USPSA all the time, but now you're on a year-long climbing trip surrounded by mostly hippies and spend most of your time in Canada, where everything you used to compete in your sport is illegal. How would you explain to people what you do if you truly want to inform them? How would you explain it if you wanted them just to leave you alone?
If you really wanted to inform them, I would probably suggest, well, what would you do? Like, you could show like a lot of there's a lot of competitive activities that have a lot to do with what would you say, not a paramilitary aspect, but like a combative aspect. Like, I don't really see anything about 3-gun shooting or handgun shooting that is much different from boxing or jiu-jitsu or anything else. Those things are all perfectly fine to sit there and go around with, because we no longer consider some of those activities like valid forms of self-defense, like jiu-jitsu is and boxing and stuff like that. But like fencing, like if you told the same people, oh, I'm an Olympic level fencer, and they're like, oh, that's so great.
Oh, the sword fighting thing.
That's so fencing.
I'm thinking like skilling shit.
And like, what's the entire goal? Like, my entire goal is to take this light rapier sword and run it through a man. Like, that's the goal. Like, and any hit like
Count of Monte Cristo.
Yeah, that thing's badass. Like, it's
that
through the waterfall, getting quick.
I've seen Princess Bride. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, and so like there's that kind of aspect, and if they want them to leave you alone, it's just like, I still have those skills and I'm still dangerous. Leave me alone.
I just say it just depends where you're at, dude. Because Canada is just like the United States. If you're in Alberta, it's God's land. It's a good place. If you're in Quebecois, may God have mercy on your soul. All you can do is run away and yell tabernacle, and then flee for your life.
Yeah, and it's like the people that you're sitting there going around with, it's just like everyone's opposed to firearms and violence until they need a firearm to help oppose. Everyone's happy that someone's got the deer rifle when the grizzly or the brown bear comes running out of the bush.
I would also say, Adam, reach out to Eric Sayo. Eric kind of runs into a similar conundrum with his photography world he lives in, because obviously a lot of people in that social media and that world are very much left leaning, and Eric obviously shoots and does all this sort of stuff, and so he has to kind of play both sides as well, and so he may have some personal insight into that matter.
So part of what I do normally with drawing houses, we have clients that that come from, a lot of our clients come from like California and Chicago. A lot of the more liberal places in the world. And Tim, my partner, likes to, I mean, he likes to be like, to say, oh yeah, Robert travels around the country and he shoots guns. And it's always it's always a little bit nervous when he says that, because a lot of these people that are coming from these other places, they maybe are more liberal minded. And one of the things that I have become accustomed to doing is, when that comes up, I'll be, yeah, I play a game and it's competitive. It's competitive shooting, and I really enjoy it. But I always kind of like very quickly lead into this thing about how I like to teach people about firearms and firearm safety and how to be safe with a firearm. And that's, for me, that's kind of the bridge that I use to not sound like I'm in some paramilitary organization. And that's what I do a lot. And
Says the one guy I know who's probably building a killdozer.
I don't tell them that until the check clears.
We can't see it, Jared, because God has blinded our eyes that we cannot literally see the killdozer.
No, it's just it's hard, dude, because I mean you don't know who you're talking to. And I mean, most of my clients are very nice. They're good people, but people come with like preconceived notions, and I have just found the easiest way to have that conversation is to try and find the bridge that most people can understand, which is, I like to do this thing, but I really like to talk and teach people about how to be safe with it.
Yeah.
And it's always worked.
There are safe ways to do autoerotic asphyxiation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and you
totally
need to teach people about those things.
Yes.
If I don't call you in 10 minutes, come kick down the bathroom door. I'm choking on the floor.
Let's see, from Nate Osborne. I was reading PCSL rules this week and wanted to ask your views on the safety rules. PCSL allows for stage DQs for things like fingering the trigger when not shooting or making ready too early, as long as nobody's downrange and all the other safety rules were followed. If you could, would you implement something similar in USPSA? Since USPSA only permits a match DQ for a finger in the trigger, I'll bet that violation is overlooked by ROs frequently. Would having something like a stage DQ as a consequence for the first time encourage calling a violation like that more often and actually result in safer behavior in the long run?
I think
Maybe.
On the finger and the trigger, I think a stage DQ is too far. I think literally a procedural, like the minusing of the points from the stage, is enough to keep people inside the shooting lines. It's enough to prevent people from shooting targets they're not supposed to want to shoot. So like if you sit there and say, finger, it's procedural, you're getting it, it is non-negotiable, we're not having a discussion about it, you get the points taken away, it would clean up a lot of the act pretty quick.
Yeah, the hard thing with that though, Tommy, is I actually agree with you, but the one thing that I've always thought about is it puts into that subjectivity. The RO's like, well, I saw it, and it's like, well, do you have proof of that? Well, I saw it. I saw it.
It's the same thing as like you shot that shot. Well, that foot was outside of the shooting area.
Sure, but from my perspective, my goal with all rules is to eliminate subjectivity.
Yeah,
and that's why I don't like the per shot procedurals and stuff like that, because it gets into the subjective thing. What's the competitive advantage? Like significant advantage. I don't like that. But I agree with you. I think the procedural is the way to go. But then if you get a procedural on stage 1 and then you get the same thing on stage 7,
which we can keep track
now
of,
you're done.
Yep.
Now you're done.
Yep.
Because we can track all that now.
Yep, IDPA has it in their scoreboards on their practice score. You get a finger call on one thing, you get banged for it, guess what it props up? Bing!
Yeah,
hey,
I think that's actually a
come
good
get
way
the
to
match director.
Yeah, IDPA did it right in that regard, I think. Because he is right. Nobody wants to call a finger because it's an instant DQ. And that's just the way it is.
And
I like my solution.
Punch him in the junk?
General shaming procedural. If you do anything, it's just shame. Oh, you took your gun out when you weren't supposed to? Did you do anything dangerous technically? No. But should you be shamed, and should everyone make fun of you? And should we say, look, everyone, Robert's dumb. Yeah, maybe. So I'm down for those.
I think that a significant penalty is enough. Now, that being said, there are obvious things that you do that should always be a complete disqualification from the match.
Pointing the gun at Robert.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like a fan of like the general shaming on most things that are procedural, like rounds exiting berms, bad. Bullets
Guaranteed
going off when
that
they're
has
not
to be
supposed
out,
to
yeah.
go off, bad.
Mm-hmm.
Breaking the 180 in a I would say, how would you say this? Breaking a 180 that endangers people or messing around with loaded firearms or unloaded firearms outside of safe areas. Like, I know that people do not find that super offensive of unloading or messing around with firearms outside of safe areas, but literally that's what keeps people from getting shot when people are dicking around with guns.
Right.
Like, we all F up sometime mentally, and the whole point of the safe area and the no ammunition in the safe area is if that shit goes bang, it goes bang basically into a berm that's built around that safe area.
Right.
In that system. And so it's just like, if you start allowing people to kind of do all that, because once it becomes general shaming, and then it's just like, well, what you have is you start having a neglect of, well, I don't know how you get a tolerance for people not willing to officiate outside the lines. And it's just like, he's cool. Now he can do that. Now that we kind of do that, like, these are kind of the effed up rules. Like, I think these are dumb rules that you could get a general shaming for handling the shit out there. And then guess what everyone's doing? So, like,
yes,
the strictness,
but I think you just need to have the lines. You need to have lines where you say this is a procedural, this is a DQ. If you handle your firearm behind other individuals with your gun out, and it doesn't matter if you're in the hotel and you can't see the people in front of you, but they're in front of you, that's a DQ, bro. We cannot have that. And like, I get it where it's like, okay, look, you're up against the berm, you're staring at the berm, and for all intents and purposes, that is a safe direction to have an AD, and you're manipulating your firearm there. It's like, no, okay.
Yeah, but that's the problem.
Don't do that.
That comes into kind of that degrees of sin.
Right.
You know, it's like we have this hard, fast rule, and we have this rule for a reason. And to the extent that we keep expanding that out, eventually 181 turns into 187, turns into 270,
Correct.
and we're pointing guns at people.
Because the reason is like not the degree in which somebody violated it. It is the degree of the consequence that could happen if it gets violated in an absolute like worst case scenario. So it's like it's the same rule like at UPS. When I'm putting a trailer up against the dock, I physically have to look down that dock and make sure no one's in that dock and that the door is closed to the loading bay. Now, could I squeeze it in while someone's undoing his landing gear and that door is open? I could, but we have literally killed people for not looking at it, and then we've seen people try to mess around and try to open doors on the back of the trailer, and they get literally crushed behind the trailer as they're trying to dick around with the stuff. And so that's the reason it's 180, not 182, not 185. That's the reason why if you sit there and you send a shot somewhere else and like, it left this bay, but it's going to go someplace safe. We know what it is. And, I was loading the gun over here, but I didn't have I was loading my magazines in the safe area, but I didn't have my gun out. Well, I was practicing my reloads in the safe area, but I didn't chamber around.
Right.
It's because eventually that stuff ends up with someone getting shot. You know, it's like, don't pick up loaded guns when you drop them, because you're the worst person on earth to pick them up. And it may go off and you may be fine, but you're not in this, like, it's the damage that it could do to you or somebody else in the worst case scenario. That's what the rules there are for, not the degrees of the violation.
And that actually right there is kind of the key thing. I mean, when we talk about stage DQs, general shaming, we talk about them with this idea of, you know, how bad is it actually, or how bad could it be? Yeah. But on the worst day possible, we have rules to try to prevent the worst day possible. And to the extent that you start to allow greater and greater like pushes into those areas, you increase the likelihood of the worst day possible. And USPSA does have a very good rule set. And the way that we handle our DQs and all that sort of thing actually is really quite solid. All these other organizations, whether it's PCSL, IDPA, they're basing their rule set off of what IPSC USPSA did because it's such a solid rule book. Now, I will be the first to tell you that, I mean, there are rules that we have that are kind of dumb rules. And some of those rules, okay, let's have a conversation about those and let's fix those rules. But some of the things we just need to be hard on. If you point a gun at somebody, screw you, you're going home. If you go and if you have a squib and then you decide that you're going to go and clear your squib inside of the jail while you have people that are wandering around, and then you point a gun down range where all the people are and you pull the trigger, and then you get DQ'd for it, and then you go over and you yell at the people who narked you out.
Right.
I mean,
and then argue with everybody and like threaten,
and then argue with everybody. Maybe
and then try to start a fight.
DQ, you should not be allowed to be a part of that club anymore.
Yep.
So like here's the one thing is like everyone's looking at the degree of sin which happens with a shooter. What's the difference between a shooter doing a 181 and the shooter pointing a gun at somebody?
In the rule book? Nothing.
No, in life. And the difference is where the person was standing when the guy broke the 180. I could literally do a 182 and be perfectly safe, but I could also do a 182 and not have control of the person who's scoring the targets as I'm shooting the stage, and then I break the 182 and point the gun at the person. Both of those scenarios at which I broke the 180, I am not in control of what the backstop is of where I point that gun, but I am in control of where I point the gun. So it's not so much of the degree of how bad it was. It was if this other thing that was outside of your control was in the wrong place when you broke the rules, and only by the grace of God and luck here was somebody not in a position to get hurt.
Jesus.
Jesus was on your side, so therefore it's a general shaming, when it should just be like, no, you're DQ'd because you were not in control if somebody was down there when you made that catastrophic mistake.
Okay, so let's go back to the finger and the trigger, and we call that a stage DQ. Okay, there are ranges where if you put around over the berm or up into the sky,
raise the muzzle
above,
the
the Wyoming Antelope Club was the Wyoming Antelope Club in Florida. You know, they have planes that fly over. Okay, so they have hard cover. You can't raise the muzzle. It's a rule.
What was that world shoot down in like Puerto Rico? They had a world shoot for IDPA, and they literally had apartment buildings behind the berms, and one of the rules was you could not raise the muzzle over the berm because then you would be basically pointing loaded guns at people's houses.
SLPSA, as the big salty range. Okay, somebody goes and they torch around over the berm. Well, they had their finger in the trigger when it shouldn't have been there.
Yep.
And what happens if that round leaves the range and then hits something? Now, Big Salty, SLPSA, we lose our club. But we lose our club because we didn't really want to call a person on it and DQ a person on it because we felt bad for him or we were concerned about it. And so we allow a problem. And we're seeing this there's actually a question coming up, but we're seeing this in USPSA and the culture. And I'll be the first to admit, I'm a part of that problem in the sense of I teach this introduction to USPSA class. And when I teach that class, I teach it from the standpoint of I'm trying to teach people how to play the game. And if they do something that would be a DQ in a regular match, and not like pointing a gun at somebody, but I mean, if they're running around with the finger on the trigger, I pull them off to the side and we say, this is what I saw. This is the problem. Here's how you're going to solve that for the next stage. And I keep them there. It's a bit of a different scenario because it's a learning environment. I understand that. But the point still remains that what we think of as little infringements, little rules that we break that don't really have any consequence, like just give them a stage DQ or a general shaming, has the potential to have lasting ramifications that kills a person, you lose the club. And so there has to be obviously a balance in all things, but at the same time, I think we need to be aware that there are really bad consequences if we get this wrong.
Right.
Yep. Yep.
From Alex Went, my local USPSA club is having a problem with a few bad eggs who threaten to spoil the whole bunch. How would you suggest dealing with the people who take themselves too seriously and they get DQ'd for safety violations and then add on to it and then add unsportsmanlike conduct? Then there are people that are just finding ways to cheat and then hide it. How would you deal with them?
I think the old school teacher method of like you two can't sit next to each other anymore is the first way of handling situations like that.
Explain.
Let's say me and Jared are having a little bit of a ruckus, and we're disruptive, and we're talking, and we cheat on tests, and we play Game Boy Advanced games during class, and we send texts and stuff like that. Like the teacher would just be like, "Give me your cell phones. You're not allowed to be there." And I think the first thing that could be is like, the first discipline for people who are like that is you shall no longer be allowed to self squad. We shall assign you a squad, and we shall assign people who shall make sure that the officiation goes as well as it can. The parts that get wrong with, like, a lot of people can, like, when they're
Like a
together with
nanny.
other people, can
A
like
nanny squad.
yeah, you
Pretty
can have
much.
like you can have a nanny squad, and like one of the things that's most, a lot of us are much better shooters because we shot with the walkies.
Mm-hmm.
We shot with the walkies, and we're like, no, you don't walk the stage. You're not on deck. Thank you. Go tape. And like a lot of those kind of things that you had, and like the respect of what it takes to accept your points, accept your procedurals, don't be an ass, don't fight over stuff, don't get too wound up. Everyone has a bad stage kind of thing. And what happens is you get people who are the worst of themselves when they are around other people who have that attitude and that bravado that wants to keep them there. And so that's the one thing I would say is like you don't let them self squad. And if they continue to have problems, it is a volunteer sport, which means it's volunteer on our end too.
Okay, so what happens if you have people in the club that are showing up the night before a match and shooting the stages that have been built but don't have all the paper on there? They go and put paper up in there, and now they're shooting the stages.
Yeah, well, it's like regardless of the paper, you can find the fastest way through a stage as long as you know the start position and where you need to end. Like,
Yeah.
because it's a free form, it's not like it's anything else. Like, that's cheating.
I would warn them once, and then I would remove them from the club.
Yeah, well, the first time is always like, okay, you might not have known that would be considered cheating. Just like you can't shoot the same match twice in two different divisions. It's a competitive equity problem. And so like so then you get the shame, and then if you get caught doing it again, like you get thrown out. I don't think that we need to have an infinite number of dismissals, or we got to keep you around because it's all for the betterment of whatever great goal we have in common. It's like the great goal we have in common is USPSA. And what happens with people is they go, I don't like these rules. I don't like to do this. I think this is dumb, and these are the things I'm not going to enforce.
Well, here's the problem. Go ahead.
And then when you stop enforcing the things that are outside of the fault lines, the quality of the product inside the fault lines and inside the beep and the last shot get detrimentally worse.
Yeah, and here's one of the problems that we're seeing right now. This situation that we had this week with that shooter who got DQ'd was the person who he went after is a longtime member of the club and was very, he was very upset about it, and upset enough to write a very long paper. Guy gets DQ'd
for handling a gun basically inside
outside of the safe area.
Outside of the safe area, right behind the shooters, because it's like a little
in
thing.
an unsafe manner.
Everyone sees it. The two ROs there, who are ROs, did not do anything about it, and just said and one RO was like, "No, I'm going to go talk to the range master and the match director because you don't get to play with guns," and clear squibs behind the shooters and not inside the safe area.
Yeah. Right. And he was upset about it enough that he ended up writing like a 4-paragraph letter to the SLPSA board.
The RO who
was
who enforced the rules.
the bad guy went after, essentially.
Yeah.
And so that happened, but the concern that I think that people aren't really taking into effect is when you allow a problem to grow if you don't solve the problem at when it's tiny, and you allow that problem to grow
Fester.
out of proportion, fester, yeah. Now you have people who have been with the club for a long time who are saying, I don't know that I want to be here anymore. Through no fault of their own, they're now being run off because your club did not deal with the problem when they should have.
Right.
And so now the club is in the position of saying, how are we going to solve this problem? Because we didn't deal with it early on. And that's the hard thing. And I was talking to Blake yesterday about this. Culture is hard to build, but it's very easy to destroy.
Yep.
And that's what we're worried about what's happening is you have this small group of people that
very vocal
group of people that are actively trying to do their own thing and run their own world, but it's dragging the club down with it.
Essentially shoot their own matches under their own rules too. Because in a conversation with one of them, I got the, well, these are the rules, and we're kind of like the fuck it, like we'll do what we want, and it's just like, well, then don't come shoot USPSA.
Well, they've already been kicked out once, and they for some reason they let them back in.
Well, and they come back because it's the best sport in handgun shooting, and there's no other, and the best place to have it is at SLPSA.
And that's the big thing there is the reason why, and I've always told guys this before. I have a lot of cop buddies who want to come out and they want to go shoot for the first time, and they get nervous about it, and they're like, I don't know if I want to shoot a full match. And I'm like, okay, well, there's lots of newer, or I don't want to call them beginner clubs, but there's a lot of clubs in the area that cater to more beginner or intermediate shooters. For instance, LTD, the Farm, UDPL, the Armory matches, Springville, Discount Guns and Armory, the old Range Masters. There's all these clubs that have, they are more beginner style matches. LTD is getting up there where LTD is providing a higher quality product, and LTD is getting better and better and better. But I would say there's a significant difference between the matches we have at SLPSA
the crown
and
jewel
all
of
the other
Utah
matches
competitive shooting is SLPSA.
Yeah, Jared, totally.
Right. And so SLPSA, one of the reasons why, because SLPSA is 10 out of 10, is because they have those standards. They have everything in place where they have, you have guys like Dave Moore who will go around and they'll enforce these ticky-tacky rules. But at the same time, enforcing those ticky-tacky rules is what makes SLPSA great, because we have to actually follow the rule set. And people know if you go to SLPSA, you better be doing the right things. You know that you better have your shit on tight, because if you don't, you'll get called out, you'll get DQ'd, you'll get procedurals, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's because that's how SLPSA is, and that's what makes it a good, and it's a higher level club, and we're allowed, I think, to do more advanced things in some ways, and you invite an advanced shooter here because of these standards that SLPSA has. And that's what I actually love about the club, is because it's very aggressive and it's a very good club. It runs the rules. It runs it correctly. I know that if I shoot at SLPSA, I could go shoot at USPSA Nationals and I wouldn't get DQ. Whereas if you come out and shoot at the UPOA match, for instance, and then you try to come shoot at a SLPSA state match, you're going to get DQ'd because the rules aren't 100% followed to the T at the UPOA matches, and I make them that way for a specific reason. This is just like the other clubs.
This is the big bonus of like WDSA, which was like the little IDPA brother for UDPL for a long time, and it was kind of like one of the clubs where you kind of thought like it was kind of like this shares a club with LTD, and a lot of the people who shoot LTD shoot WDSA, and over the past couple of years, like Ray Monteblano up there has really squirreled that thing away into a like, no, these are the rules. We're doing the rules. Like, we'll try to be nice, but like you're gonna do the rules, and we'll have some fun with some stages here and there. But like the rules are the rules. This is what's gonna do, and you're gonna get the penalties you shot, and it's it's turning into a better thing. But I think the leadership at SLPSA right now, like Dan Ward said, one of the best things on the Friday match is like, we have to. You will respect the ROs, and the ROs are going to enforce the rules. If you are moving with your finger in the trigger, you are going to get DQ'd. You can't do that. And it's just like, okay, that's the way to go.
The last two questions from Andrew Fisher. How are primer and powder supplies over your way? In New Zealand, we are still paying too much for whatever we can get.
I think ours are powder and primers are still too much, but we were forced into scarcity, which made us feel like we had to pay the $80. Like now, like a good price is like 60. Like if you find
Yeah,
it
about
right,
60, 65, somewhere
60,
right in there.
65. And so like we're paying 110% or 120% more for our primers. But the idea of not having them for so long over the past 3 years, now that they're in stock, we're very much happy to pay the $80 or $60. So it's still a significant increase in the price, except for it is not a hassle to go find them. So yep, still
Yeah, you
powder
can find them on
powder's
the store shelves right now.
50% more expensive than it used to be, 30, 35
Mm-hmm.
bucks, maybe 60% more expensive than it used to be. Like your USPSA rates went up along with the powder and the primers. Like the sport generally just got 60% more expensive to shoot.
Right.
Here,
Let's see.
one thing real quick though, before
Yeah.
we go on to the next question, I just want to say, if we are having issues with shooters who are bringing down the club, who are being negative, and who are not contributing to the club, my question is what do we get by having them in the club? If the answer is nothing, kick them out. If they're not bringing anything, if they're not volunteering, if they're not building stages, if they're not helping do anything, why would I keep you?
Well,
If you don't help in any
point,
way,
really.
shape, or
the
form,
minimal requirement
get out.
for shooting USPSA at a club is
Reset.
show up,
Pay your fee.
pay your fee,
Minimum
you
requirement.
pay your fee, you abide by the rules. That's all you need to do to be a member in good standing. Pay your fees, abide by the rules while you're shooting.
The other
Like,
thing that sucks
one
about
of the
that
things,
is,
like, told,
is
like,
it's
set up-
just pushing me back into this code of conduct thing, and I'm not. I don't know
You-
that I like the idea, but
you
you
don't
see
need
stuff like this happen, and you're just like, come on.
Don't
dude.
ye mend
The-
me, bro.
I know.
the code of conduct is not an issue. These are already rules that are in place.
Yeah.
It says nothing to do, like, we don't need a moral arbiter. We don't need to peer into anybody's
no, I
soul.
agree.
We just need to tell them you can't shoot anymore today. You need to do your gun maintenance in the safe area.
We're
we don't-
breaking up with you.
yeah, and like we caught
It's
cheating.
not.
We caught you cheating. We caught you not enforcing the rules. We caught you breaking rules. We caught you being unsafe. You no longer get to participate in this club.
Right.
Like these are not character defining things. These are like you've broken the rules that are already set. Clear as day. We no longer need you. We don't need to set
Yeah.
up new sets of rules to do it. For special privileges
That's fair,
for
dude. That's totally fair.
special privileges for clubs, you want to come use the club's equipment and all that stuff. You want more privileges for the club, then feel free to add on more responsibilities for that. But USPSA at a club, it's just do the basic USPSA stuff.
Mhm.
Like,
And if
you
they're
don't
not
even
doing
have to
that,
show up with
kick
ammo.
'em.
Someone
Yeah,
will
kick
probably
'em
give
out.
you some ammo. You need a
Or a
tape and
gun.
follow the rules. Correct.
Exactly.
All right, last question. Is it better for beginners to learn iron sights and then move to a red dot, or vice versa?
Dot.
Dot.
I'm
would
totally
say
I'm
dot.
totally on the dot. Dot's easier to learn both eyes open. It's easier to
Okay.
learn target focus.
Jared can answer this. Have the qualifications of the police officers gone up when they went to the dot?
Yes.
There you go. There's your answer.
Well, so this is my longer answer. Dots give you, the shooter, more information. And so from a teacher standpoint, you, the student, having more information helps my job as a teacher infinitely more. It makes it much easier for me to give you constructive and actually correct criticism to help you shoot correctly and better than iron sights. Because a lot of times with irons, you have these old guys come up to you and be like, all right, buddy, you give it that little finger, give it a little too much finger and it'll miss. Go, no, you want to do this. And you have this old guys coming up with these FUD lore of this like mystical bullshit.
The mystical
And-
finger position, the mystical grip position.
Hold
Yeah,
the gun
just-
like you're holding an egg and just slowly squeeze the target.
All this hocus pocus shit that when you say
I held it like an
and you
egg.
talk
Yeah, and he
about it-
scrambled the motherfucker. Bull
And the
Durham,
funny thing,
everybody. Bull
Yeah.
The
Durham.
funny thing though
That's
is
a great
after
movie.
looking back at it and you say, what does that even mean? And everyone goes, I don't know. I don't know what this old man's telling me to do, but I want him to go away. So I'll tell him, yeah, that helped. Thanks. And then the old man goes away to molest some other cadet.
Yeah.
But that's the big thing for me with dots, is it actually gives me specific information. Because if they come out on target and they shoot and the dot does left to right, that tells me something. If it goes right to left, if it goes up and then down, if it overcorrects, if it undercorrects, all this stuff is giving me information that I can use to help them get better. Whereas if I ask them with iron sights and they shoot an iron sighted gun and they go bang, and you're like, did the front sight come in from the top left or the top right? Well, what do you think happened there with the front sight? And they're gonna go, I don't know.
Yep.
I wasn't looking at the front sight. I was looking at the target.
The ability to remember where the dot position was when you broke the shot was like something that you can pick up very easily. When for a lot of us, it took us a little bit of time with iron sights, like months or a year, to figure out like calling a shot with iron sights
or longer.
Yeah,
years.
And the beauty of the dot is exactly what Jared is saying. And because when you put the dot on the place that you want to shoot, then, and you can demonstrate this very clearly. It's very, very obvious. The dot there, bullet goes right there. And it's this, cause effect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And anytime that it doesn't, because you know that that's perfect. I mean, when you try and teach a brand new person to line up irons, I mean, there can be variation in all of that, and it can change. Essentially, it's like trying to teach your 15, 16-year-old kid how to drive a car. Do you put them in a manual transmission or an automatic? You give them the automatic because it eliminates the amount of variables that they have to overcome to achieve the end result. And eventually, you can go back to irons, but you've actually given them a solid set of fundamentals, which is really, really helpful. And I think that dot is so helpful that way.
Used to have to do beginning of a class or whatever, I'd do like the exemplar drill. They'd have the grip, they'd line up, and I'd pull the trigger. And one of the benefits of that exemplar drill, especially when everyone was shooting iron sights, was confirming their idea of how the line up the sights was correct. Because you would see, like, aim at this dot, and then you would pull the trigger, and so you knew it wasn't the trigger press. Your hand is on their hands. You can feel the tension that they have in their hands. And if the shot was way high or way low, then you could be like, okay, so what are you doing? Oh, I'm putting the rear sight comes across the center dot of the front sight, and so, like, the front sight's high in the rear, whatever like that. You're like, no, level off. And then you could also figure out, too, it's like, for their sights, is it shooting to the center of the dot or the top of the sights? You could kind of figure that out by having that discussion. But that was a very much in control question setup. Almost every sort of input that the shooter could put in taken out of it just to get that simple of the information. With the dot, was the dot on the target when you press the trigger? Yes. Okay, cool. Was it not on the dot? Was it on the dot and a miss? He goes, yes. And like you're just like, okay, your dot's probably not zeroed. We can go zero that. Like there's infinitely easier. And you only need to buy it once. It's the best night sight available. It's infinitely adjustable. How much money have we spent on having a fiber and an adjustable sight? Yeah. That also works at night because they don't even do that either. So it's just like it's the ultimate solution.
Wow.
That's it.
Oh, and Wilson says, wow.
That's crazy.
I like going Wilson.
Yeah, me too.
I
held it like an egg. Man, he scrambled.
The son of a bitch, didn't he? Get out there that fast. That was a stewardess on it. It was one of the great.
He's gonna throw you a fastball.
80s or 90s.
Was it? Don't look at me. I gave you a gift. Don't show him up. Run.
Here comes the deuce. Try to show my picture. Run, dummy.
The best movies ever made. Bull Durham. Thank you for listening, downloading, and subscribing. We appreciate all that you guys do. Thanks for hopping on Telegram and following us along. Thanks for checking out the videos on YouTube. Thanks for leaving comments. Thanks for everything. You guys really make this show worth doing for 300 and how many episodes? What episode is this?
1 million.
78.
378. And it's called I Held It Like an Egg.
I remember when we hit like 300 and we thought that was a big deal.
Oh my gosh. It's not a big deal. Anyways, thanks for doing all that for Robert Wyatt. And Jared Stepp, I'm Tom Nelson, bidding you peace, love, and soul as we depart into the open waters of the Sea of Life, while Steve Koski is getting drunk and Kenny Terry is walking around in the wilderness with his wife, looking for something to kill. Which one will
Probably.
come back? Find out on next week's episode of the PARAcast. Tugboat, all that, peace, love, soul.
Good night, everybody.
Wow.
Wow.
Dude.